The morning sun painted golden streaks across the manicured gardens of Windsor Castle as 10-year-old Prince George walked alongside his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. It was a quiet Tuesday in late spring, and the palace grounds buzzed with their usual activity. Gardeners tended to the rose bushes, staff members hurried between buildings with important documents, and the ever-present royal guards stood at attention in their traditional red uniforms and tall black hats. Prince George had always been fascinated by these guards. Their unwavering dedication, their perfect posture, and their commitment to protecting the royal family impressed him deeply. Unlike other children who might giggle or try to make the guards break their stoic expressions, George watched them with genuine respect and curiosity. On this particular morning, something was different. As they passed the main courtyard, George noticed one of the guards swaying slightly on his feet. The guard, a young man named Thomas Wellington, had been standing at his post since dawn. The combination of the warm spring sun, his heavy uniform, and the fact that he had skipped breakfast was beginning to take its toll. Queen Elizabeth II was deep in conversation with her private secretary about the day's schedule when Prince George gently tugged on her sleeve. "Granny," he whispered, "I think that guard doesn't feel well." The Queen followed her grandson's gaze and immediately noticed what George had observed. Guard Wellington was indeed struggling, though he was doing his best to maintain his professional composure. His face had grown pale, and tiny beads of sweat were forming on his forehead despite the mild temperature. Prince George's tender heart was immediately filled with concern. He had learned from his parents, Prince William and Catherine, about the importance of caring for others and showing kindness to everyone, regardless of their position or status. The lessons about empathy and compassion that had been instilled in him since early childhood were now guiding his actions. "Granny, can we help him?" George asked quietly, his young voice filled with genuine worry. "He looks like he might fall down." The Queen looked at her grandson with pride. Even at his young age, George was displaying the kind of awareness and compassion that would serve him well in his future role. She nodded approvingly, understanding that this was one of those teachable moments that would shape his character. "What do you think we should do, George?" she asked, wanting to see how her grandson would handle the situation. Without hesitation, George reached into his small backpack that he always carried during their morning walks. Inside, alongside his favorite books and small toys, he kept a water bottle and some snacks that his mother had packed for him. He pulled out the water bottle and looked up at his grandmother with determined eyes. "I want to give him some water, Granny. Mama always says that when someone doesn't feel good, they need to drink water and rest a little." The Queen's heart swelled with pride at her grandson's thoughtfulness. She could see the genuine concern in his young face and knew that this gesture came from a place of pure kindness, not from any desire for attention or recognition. As they approached the guard, other palace staff members began to notice the situation. Several courtiers and servants had gathered at a respectful distance, watching the scene unfold. Word quickly spread through the palace corridors that something unusual was happening in the main courtyard. Guard Wellington, fighting to maintain his composure, was unaware of the approaching royal family members. His training had taught him to focus straight ahead, to ignore distractions, and to never break protocol no matter what circumstances arose. He had sworn an oath to protect the royal family with his life, and that commitment meant everything to him. Prince George approached slowly, his small hand clutching the water bottle tightly. He had never directly interacted with one of the guards while they were on duty, and he wasn't entirely sure about the proper protocol, but his concern for the young man's well-being overshadowed any uncertainty about royal etiquette. "Excuse me, sir," Prince George said in his polite, clear voice that had been carefully trained for public speaking. "I noticed you might be feeling unwell. Would you like some water?" The guard's eyes remained fixed straight ahead, but George could see a flicker of surprise cross his face. The young prince understood that the guard couldn't respond or move from his position, but he also recognized the human need for care and kindness that transcended any royal protocol. The Queen stepped forward, her presence immediately commanding the attention of everyone in the courtyard. "Guard Wellington," she said in her authoritative yet kind voice, "my grandson has noticed your discomfort and wishes to offer assistance. You have my permission to accept his gesture of kindness." The words hung in the air like a royal decree, and everyone present understood the significance of the moment. The Queen herself was giving permission for a breach of traditional protocol, recognizing that human compassion was more important than rigid adherence to rules. Guard Wellington's training warred with his gratitude. He had been taught never to accept anything while on duty, never to break his stance, and never to engage in conversation. But the direct permission from the Queen herself, combined with the genuine concern radiating from the young prince, created a situation that no amount of training could have prepared him for. The courtyard had grown remarkably quiet. Even the birds seemed to have paused their morning songs, as if sensing the importance of the moment that was unfolding. Palace staff members who had gathered to watch held their breath, understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Prince George extended the water bottle toward the guard, his young face filled with hope and concern. The simple gesture represented so much more than offering a drink to someone in need. It was a moment that bridged the gap between royalty and service, between protocol and humanity, between duty and kindness. The morning sun continued to shine down on the scene, casting long shadows across the ancient stones of Windsor Castle. In that moment, the centuries-old traditions of the British royal family were being quietly redefined by the compassionate heart of a 10-year-old boy who simply wanted to help someone in need. Guard Wellington felt his chest tighten with emotion as he looked down at the small boy standing before him with outstretched hands. The water bottle gleamed in the sunlight, but it was the genuine concern in Prince George's eyes that truly moved him. For a moment, that felt like an eternity, protocol battled with gratitude in his mind. Slowly, with the careful precision that marked all his movements, Guard Wellington reached out and accepted the water bottle. His white gloves contrasted sharply against the blue plastic as he brought it to his lips and took a grateful sip. The cool water immediately provided relief. But the emotional impact of the gesture was far more powerful than any physical comfort. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Your kindness means more than you could possibly know." Prince George beamed with satisfaction, his face lighting up with the pure joy that comes from helping another person. He stepped back respectfully, allowing the guard space while continuing to watch with concern. The young prince's natural empathy had created a moment that would be remembered throughout the palace for years to come. The Queen observed the interaction with deep satisfaction. She had spent decades training members of her family in the delicate balance between maintaining royal dignity and showing genuine human compassion. Watching her grandson navigate this situation with such grace and sincerity filled her with immense pride. Word of the incident traveled through Windsor Castle with remarkable speed. Kitchen staff preparing the morning meals paused their work to hear about the young prince's gesture. Housekeeping teams cleaning the upper floors whispered excitedly about the unusual scene in the courtyard. Even the senior courtiers, normally focused on matters of state and royal protocol, found themselves smiling as they heard the details. Captain Harrison, the head of palace security, arrived at the courtyard just as Guard Wellington was returning the empty water bottle to Prince George. The captain had received reports of an unusual situation involving the royal family and one of his guards, and he had hurried to assess whether any security measures needed to be implemented. What he found instead was a scene of such genuine humanity that it stopped him in his tracks. The sight of his young guard, clearly moved by the prince's kindness, standing with renewed strength and dignity, told him everything he needed to know about the nature of this unusual situation. "Your Majesty," Captain Harrison said, bowing respectfully to the Queen, "I understand there has been an incident involving Guard Wellington." Queen Elizabeth II smiled with the wisdom that comes from decades of leadership and countless experiences in managing both royal protocol and human nature. "Indeed, Captain, my grandson has reminded us all of the importance of caring for those who serve us so faithfully. Guard Wellington has been standing at his post since dawn, and Prince George noticed his discomfort." The captain's stern expression softened as he looked at Prince George, who was now chatting quietly with the guard about the beautiful morning and asking if he felt better. The conversation was a perfect example of the kind of genuine interaction that the royal family strived to maintain with all those who served them. "Guard Wellington," Captain Harrison addressed his subordinate, "how are you feeling now?" The young guard straightened to his full height, his posture now strong and confident. The combination of the water, the brief rest, and most importantly, the knowledge that his well-being mattered to the royal family had completely transformed his condition. "Much better, sir," Wellington replied crisply. His Royal Highness showed remarkable kindness, and Her Majesty graciously allowed me to accept his assistance. Prince George looked up at Captain Harrison with the same earnest expression he had shown to the guard. He was feeling sick, and Mama always says we should help people when they don't feel good. Guards work very hard to keep us safe, so we should take care of them too. The simple wisdom in the young prince's words struck everyone present. The child had distilled the complex relationship between the royal family and their protectors into a fundamental truth about human kindness and mutual respect. Captain Harrison knelt down to Prince George's eye level, his military bearing softening into something more paternal. "Your Royal Highness, your compassion today has shown all of us what true leadership looks like. Guard Wellington and all our security personnel will remember this kindness for the rest of their lives." The crowd of palace staff that had gathered began to applaud softly, their appreciation for the young prince's gesture creating a warm atmosphere in the usually formal courtyard. The sound echoed off the ancient walls of Windsor Castle, carrying with it a sense of pride and joy that permeated the entire palace. Guard Wellington, still deeply moved by the experience, made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. In an unprecedented gesture, he slowly and ceremoniously removed his tall black bearskin hat and held it respectfully in his hands. The courtyard fell silent again as the significance of this action became clear. Royal guards never remove their ceremonial headgear while on duty. The hat is a symbol of their authority, their commitment, and their unwavering dedication to protecting the crown. To remove it was to break one of the most fundamental aspects of their protocol. But in this moment, Guard Wellington felt that no protocol was more important than showing proper respect for the kindness he had received. His gesture was not one of abandoning his duty, but rather of acknowledging that true duty includes recognizing and honoring the compassion of those he served. Queen Elizabeth II understood immediately what the guard's action represented. She had witnessed countless ceremonial events, countless displays of royal protocol, and countless moments of formal respect. But this simple gesture of gratitude from a young guard to her grandson represented something far more meaningful than any scripted ceremony could ever achieve. The other guards stationed around the courtyard, witnessing their colleagues' unprecedented action, faced their own moment of decision. They could maintain their rigid stance and traditional protocol, or they could follow Wellington's lead in honoring the remarkable display of compassion they had all witnessed. One by one, in a movement that seemed to spread like ripples across a pond, the other guards began to remove their hats as well. Each movement was deliberate, respectful, and filled with meaning. They were not abandoning their posts or shirking their duties. Instead, they were participating in a moment of recognition that transcended normal protocol. The sight of multiple royal guards standing hatless in salute to a 10-year-old boy's kindness created one of the most extraordinary scenes in the recent history of Windsor Castle. Palace photographers, who typically captured only scheduled royal events, found themselves witnessing something completely spontaneous and genuinely moving. Prince George watched the guard's gesture with wide eyes, not fully comprehending the magnitude of what was happening, but understanding that something very special was taking place. He looked up at his grandmother, seeking guidance on how to respond to this unprecedented show of respect. The Queen placed her hand gently on her grandson's shoulder, her touch conveying both pride and approval. "You have shown these brave men what it means to lead with compassion, George," she said softly. "Their gesture shows how much your kindness has meant to them." Prince George stepped forward with the natural confidence that had been nurtured in him since birth, but his next action surprised everyone even more than his initial gesture of offering water. He walked directly to guard Wellington and, in a move that would later be described as the most heartfelt moment in recent royal history, he bowed deeply to the young guard. The bow was not the formal, measured bow that George had been taught for official ceremonies. It was the spontaneous bow of a child who genuinely respected and appreciated someone's service. His small frame bent forward with such sincerity that even the most seasoned palace staff members felt their eyes well up with emotion. "Thank you for protecting my family," George said as he straightened up, his young voice carrying a maturity that belied his years. "I hope you feel better now, and I want you to know that what you do matters to all of us." Guard Wellington's composure, which he had maintained through years of military training and months of royal service, finally cracked. A single tear rolled down his cheek as he struggled to maintain his professional bearing while processing the profound impact of the young prince's words and actions. The other guards, still standing with their hats in their hands, were equally moved. Many of them had joined the royal guard with dreams of serving their country and protecting the monarchy, but they had never expected to receive such personal acknowledgement and appreciation from a member of the royal family, especially not from someone so young. Captain Harrison, witnessing the entire scene, realized he was seeing something that would fundamentally change how the palace operated. The traditional barriers between the royal family and their protectors had been gently but permanently altered by the genuine human connection that Prince George had initiated. Queen Elizabeth II, drawing on her decades of experience in reading people and situations, recognized that this moment needed to be properly acknowledged and remembered. She stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate attention from everyone in the courtyard. "Gentlemen," she addressed the assembled guards, her voice carrying the authority that had guided the British monarchy for over 70 years. "Today, you have witnessed something extraordinary. My grandson has reminded us all that true nobility lies not in titles or protocol, but in recognizing the humanity and worth of every person who serves alongside us." The Queen paused, allowing her words to resonate throughout the courtyard. Palace staff members who had been watching from doorways and windows moved closer to hear her impromptu speech. "You serve not just as protectors of the crown, but as partners in maintaining the values that define our monarchy. Compassion, respect, and mutual care are not weaknesses in a security force. They are strengths that bind us together as a community dedicated to something greater than ourselves." As the Queen spoke, Prince William and Catherine appeared at the edge of the courtyard, having been informed by palace staff about the remarkable scene taking place. They approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt the moment, but eager to witness their son's extraordinary display of character. Catherine's heart swelled with maternal pride as she watched her son interact with the guards with such genuine care and maturity. She and William had worked hard to instill values of empathy and service in their children, but seeing those lessons manifested so naturally and powerfully in a real situation was deeply moving. Prince William, himself a former military officer, understood perhaps better than anyone the significance of what was happening. He knew the discipline and dedication required of the Royal Guard, and he also understood how meaningful it was for these men to receive such personal recognition and appreciation. Guard Wellington, having regained his composure, made another decision that would resonate throughout the palace for years to come. He addressed Prince George directly, speaking words that would be remembered and quoted long after this day had passed. "Your Royal Highness," he said, his voice steady and filled with genuine emotion, "serving your family has been the greatest honor of my life, but having you recognize that service with such kindness has made it the greatest privilege as well. I promise you that I will carry the memory of your compassion with me always, and it will make me a better guardian and a better man." The young guard's words sparked something in his colleagues. One by one, they began to step forward, each offering their own expressions of gratitude and commitment. What had started as a simple gesture of offering water to someone in need had transformed into a profound moment of connection and mutual respect. Prince George listened to each guard's words with the same attention and respect he had shown to Guard Wellington. His responses were thoughtful and genuine, creating individual moments of connection with each person who approached him. The scene continued for nearly an hour, with guards sharing stories about their service, palace staff members joining the conversation, and Prince George asking questions about their work and their families with the natural curiosity of a child combined with the genuine interest of someone who truly cared about their well-being. Queen Elizabeth II observed all of this with deep satisfaction, recognizing that her grandson was learning lessons about leadership that no formal education could provide. The ability to connect with people across all social boundaries, to recognize the dignity and worth of every individual, and to lead through compassion rather than authority were qualities that would serve him well in his future role. As the morning progressed and the spontaneous gathering began to naturally disperse, the guards returned to their posts with a renewed sense of purpose and connection to the royal family they served. The simple act of removing their hats in respect had created a new tradition that would be remembered and honored for generations. The story of Prince George's gesture spread far beyond the walls of Windsor Castle. Palace staff members shared the tale with their families, who in turn shared it with their friends and colleagues. Local newspapers picked up the story, and soon, media outlets around the world were reporting on the young prince's remarkable display of compassion and maturity. But perhaps the most lasting impact was felt within the palace itself. In the days and weeks that followed, interactions between the royal family and palace staff became noticeably warmer and more personal. The barriers of formal protocol remained, but they were tempered by a new understanding of shared humanity and mutual respect. Guard Wellington returned to his duties with a renewed sense of pride and purpose. His fellow guards, having witnessed the transformative power of simple kindness, began to approach their service with a deeper appreciation for the human connections that made their work meaningful. Prince George, unaware of the broader impact his actions had created, simply continued to be himself, curious, kind, and naturally empathetic. But the lessons he had learned that day about the power of compassion and the importance of recognizing others' contributions would stay with him as he grew toward his future role as a leader. The water bottle that had started it all was quietly preserved by palace staff, who recognized its significance as a symbol of the day when a young prince's simple act of kindness reminded everyone at Windsor Castle about the true meaning of service, respect, and human dignity. Years later, when historians would write about this moment, they would describe it not just as a heartwarming story about a kind child, but as a turning point that redefined the relationship between the British royal family and those who served them. The legacy of that spring morning would influence royal protocol and palace culture for decades to come, all because a 10-year-old boy noticed someone in need and decided to help.